Hello fellow humans and welcome to the Madhouse. I'm Josh and today is Friday the 10th of July, so I have two things I want to do. The first is point out that today is National Teddy Bears Picnic Day in the UK, so bearing that in mind, I'd like to introduce you to this guy. His name is Fred Ted. He is the oldest teddy bear I have, in fact the first thing I was ever given, I believe, or at least that I still got now, because I was given him on the day I was born by my great-grand and Dad Fred, hence the name Fred Ted. And he was my favourite for many years and he's very cute, but he's falling apart now, hence the t-shirt. It's helping him to stay together. Now I'm going to put him up there in a place where he can be fine and continue with the second part of this video, which is my summer book haul. To tell the truth, it's not the entirety of my summer book haul because I bought a really large amount of books and spent a ridiculous amount of money that I shouldn't have done. I think most booktubers do that when they start out. They start buying lots and lots of books so that they have something to talk about, but then they have too much and don't have the time to read them all in one go that they would do normally. So this is just half of my haul. This is my science fiction and fantasy haul, and there will be a general fiction and other books haul next time, whenever that will be. I haven't decided yet. I should point out that I haven't read most of these because there have been so many and I was at university and studying, and then when I came back here I'm reading American Gods, which completely drains me. It's a fantastic book and I've read it before, but it's so intense that I can't read anything else around it like I can do with others. I think I'll begin with what everyone would expect from me in a book haul video: Terry Pratchett books. There is Dragons at Crumbling Castle, which I've mentioned before. It's a collection of his children's stories. Most of them quite funny and just as witty and sarcastic and ironic and even satirical, although less so than in the adult books. There's also a hardback copy of We Three Men. I had an ebook copy and I still got it obviously. But I saw this in a charity shop for 99p and I had to buy it. I love charity shops. And We Three Men is one of my favourites. It's got the introduction of Tiffany Aching and, well, the Nightmare Fingal, the We Three Men, the return of the fairies and the Queen. Not this Queen, obviously. I don't think she would be invading Discworld. There is also The Long Utopia by Terry Pratchett and Stephen Baxter. I have a review of this upcoming, so I'm not going to talk about this too much, but I really enjoyed it. Not too sure about the ending though. Probably because there was supposed to be another book after it, but there probably isn't going to be because of Sir Terry's death. It might be that Baxter will continue it, but I doubt it because it was Terry's initial idea. To lead on from that, there is Stardust by Neil Gaiman. I picked this up because A, I love Neil Gaiman's Good Omens and American Gods, and I've also watched the film. I have yet to read this again because American Gods draining everything, but I have high hopes for it. It's based on the same John Donne poem as Howl's Moving Castle, and I really love that book and that film. There is The Feral Child by Che Golden. I assume it's pronounced Che, I don't know, I don't tend to encounter many people with that name. It could be Chi or even She, it's probably Irish. It's a book involving Celtic myths, and specifically because it's Ireland, Gaelic myths, and it's a child has been taken by the fairies and these three friends have to go and rescue him before something terrible happens to him, say he's replaced with a changeling or something. I don't know because I haven't read it yet, but I love stories of the darker parts of fairies because I get so annoyed at these Victorian ones and any fairy stories since, where they're all lovely floaty creatures that grant wishes or get a little bit angry like Tinkerbell. No, they are nasty, vile little creatures. Now you should be familiar with this one, The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon, and I'm really looking forward to this. It seems to involve psychic abilities and clairvoyance, people who can read minds, which is some of my favourite sort of magical powers, because for me the mind is the most important thing. It's the sanctum sanctorum, if you will. I love that phrase. I should use it more often. In fact, I did use it in the video last week, I believe. And for someone to break into that and turn their mind against them, twist it, make it their own, is something that horrifies me. So to read about it and have it explored properly, ooh, it's chilling. Next there is Burnout by Laura Powell. I think I picked this up from the works, I don't remember how much it was. It appears to be an urban fantasy or fantasy book in a modern setting. There are covens in the world and witchfinders, and, well, looking at the cover I would assume some sort of magic to do with the sun and fire. Now there is True Fire by Gary Meehan. I picked this one up because I saw it in the bookshop and it was just a stunning cover. It's lovely, and it seems to be quite similar to the Burnout thing. There appears to be powerful magic, dark magic, and a terrible war of some sort, but I'm not sure. I will read it and find out, hopefully before the end of the summer, but my reading list is rather large. And now for a modern classic. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I don't know how to say his last name. I am not entirely sure if this is fantasy, in all honesty, because I started it and then I stopped because I just read it for half an hour when I was on Bang Pier for that video I shot about summer, and I quite enjoyed it. I'm assuming it's fantasy because it involves some sort of prophecy and there's an alchemist. In my mind, alchemy can only be fantastical. Next there is Edgar Allan Poe's Tales of Mystery and Imagination. I have read one or two of these, not all of them, and they're quite interesting. I put these in this section because they are really horror more than anything else. And horror isn't really my sort of thing, but he has such an interesting style that they're enjoyable. There is The Bloody Chamber and Other Stories by Angela Carter. Now, Angela Carter has a fantastic writing style, and it's retellings of various fairy tales like Red Riding Hood, Bluebeard, Puss in Boots, Beauty and the Beast. And I love that sort of thing. To be honest, Beauty and the Beast is one of my favourite fairy tales. It's not my absolute favourite. And I love the dark style Carter has, so I'm really looking forward to actually finishing this. And next there is A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Now, I love the Iliad. It is one of my favourite classical mythy things, so I thought this telling of it was quite interesting because not only does it contain all of my usual favourite elements, and this copy has a wonderful embossed cover again, it feels fantastic. It explores the relationship between Achilles and Patroclus. It shows their romantic involvement, which I really enjoy. I mean, it's a bit iffy because they're, in some versions of the story, Achilles and Patroclus are cousins, but in this version that doesn't appear to be the case. I like re-explorations of old stories. On a similar theme is another take on a myth, one that hasn't been done before. It is the Penelopead by Margaret Atwood, and it's a telling of the Odyssey and the Iliad from the perspective of Penelope, Odysseus' wife, while Odysseus is off fighting for the Trojan War for 10 years, and then he's off wooing sorceresses and killing Cyclops and listening to sirens. She is at home dealing with suitors and a whole world of troubles, and it's a fascinating story. It's a strong character, some interesting musings, and just Atwood's writing style is phenomenal. If you haven't read anything of hers, read this, read some of her poetry, and read The Handmaid's Tale. You won't regret it. The Scricklings by Sorin, I'm not sure how to say that last name. It's one that I'm really looking forward to. It has this Sorin, whatever his name is, has been compared to Terry Pratchett in his style, in fact. And in fact, it says here at the back of it that born in Romania, Sorin has stubbornly resisted the temptation to learn English for well over 20 years. When he finally gave up, it was not work, nor was it video games that weakened his resolve, but rather the mind-boggling discovery of Terry Pratchett, Douglas Adams and Monty Python. With such teachers, it is no wonder that much in the same way lucky people learn to ride before they walk, Sorin has learned to be funny before being fluent. It seems to mix computer science and geekery of that sort with magic and wizardry, and it's I am so looking forward to it. Hollow Earth by John and Carol E. Barrowman, and that is John Barrowman the actor. I really enjoyed reading this one. I am hoping to convince my brother to read it as well, because it's kind of exactly his sort of thing. It's not that easy to describe, but essentially there are these twins who have the ability to bring art to life through their imaginations. So if they wanted to, they could bring the Mona Lisa to life or something like that. But someone wants to use their powers to access another realm called the Hollow Earth, where all of these monsters of the human imagination, the devils and demons and dark gods, are trapped. They want to unleash them upon the world. And it's such an interesting concept, especially for someone with such an avid imagination as mine, because I like to write and create things, and there are so many people who say that if they could access their books they would want to. Like in Inkheart, Finolia wants to get into his world. I don't want to get into mine because most of it's truly monstrous. And this is exactly the sort of idea around it. It shows the world of imagination as being that dark place, not some fantasy. No. And then City of Thieves by David Benioff. I'm not entirely sure if this is fantasy or science fiction. I haven't read it yet because I've gone through some of the others. But it sounds unusual. It's probably more likely to be historical than anything else, because it describes it as, in the coldest winter in history, in a starving city under siege, two prisoners are thrown together on a desperate adventure. Lev, a shy chess-loving adventurer, and Kolya, a charismatic chancer. They are given 1 week to complete an extraordinary mission, to scour the ravaged countryside and find a dozen eggs, or come back empty-handed and die. And I'm not quite sure about the point of this. It sounds very unusual, but for that reason alone I have to look into it. Okay. There is The Miniaturist by Jesse Burton. I initially thought it was an historical novel because it's set in 1686, but it appears to be some sort of fantasy and perhaps also a little bit of a psychological novel. I'm really looking forward to this. It's such a beautiful book anyway, and it seems to involve some sort of dollhouse or miniature house which actually controls the lives of the people around it, but I don't know for certain. If you have read this, give me your thoughts as to whether or not I should put everything else aside and start this, because I've heard only good things. But I also really want to finish American Gods. The Grace Keepers by Kirsty Logan. I believe it's a dystopian novel set in a world where the polar ice caps have melted and flooded everything, but I might be mistaken. It's described as a highly original fantasy as well, so maybe it's bridging the gap between those two, but I don't know for certain. It involves a circus after the end of the world, and it's also really pretty. I love such shiny foiled covers on there. Next there are two books, The Knife of Letting Go and The Ask and the Answer by Patrick Ness, the first two books in the Chaos Walking series. I found those in a charity shop this afternoon, and I first read these when I was at high school, but I didn't quite understand them, especially not this one. I understood this one a little better. But now that my reading has developed a little further and I'm actually looking at things from a literary perspective, I'm hoping to really enjoy them, and I'm looking to also get hold of Monsters of Men, the finale if you didn't guess. All Our Yesterdays by Kristin Terrell. It appears to be some sort of time travel thriller novel, and I'm expecting good things from this, but I'm not entirely sure what it's going to be like, because it could turn out one of two ways, as most science fiction novels involving time travel do. Either extremely terribly or extremely well, and hopefully they'll avoid the whole grandfather paradox, because that just annoys me, and it's a very overdone premise. But it sounds like there would be a grandfather paradox, because M has a mission. She must escape and travel back in time. She must kill the boy Marina loved to save her future. And I reckon that M might actually be Marina. I don't know, I've not read it. Vicious by V.E. Schwab, or Schwab, I still need to figure out how to say that, and I watched a video with her in it yesterday, and I still don't remember how they said her name. It appears to be a very dark superhero novel, and I'm really looking forward to it after reading A Darker Shade of Magic, because I really like Schwab's style. She seems to do setting exceptionally well. So, high hopes. Now, this book is something I'm really interested in, because I've heard a lot of things, and if Melanie is in some sort of camp where she's there with a lot of other gifted children, and they're being experimented on and interrogated and tested but there seems to be something else going on beyond that, something dangerous, and if it's what I suspect it is, something involving something a little bit undead, then I really enjoy it, because I'm not a big fan of the zombie genre, but I really loved World War Z, and I've heard that this is just as well written, although in a different style, so looking forward to it. All My Friends Are Superheroes by Andrew Kaufman. I feel like we should say Kaufman because it's probably an anglicisation or an Americanisation. In fact, no, he's Canadian, but would you say Canadianisation? It sounds a bit weird. Oh, there's a bookmark in it. That makes me happy. It's, as you can probably guess, about superheroes, but they're not superheroes like Superman or Batman, no. But it's where people's anxieties and mental illnesses are in fact superpowers, which is an interesting take on the idea to show that normal people can use these things to their advantage, and it's not always a bad thing. At least I assume that's what it is. I haven't read it yet, but given how short it is, I could probably get through it in about an afternoon. And now, two books I'm really looking forward to. His Majesty's Dragon, first book in the Temeraire series, which appears to be a version of the Napoleonic War, but where every side has dragons, so history has gone quite differently. The British Empire is not so big, because everybody has dragons. And, well, I'm a big fan of the Napoleonic period anyway. And then there is Talon by Julie Kagawa. Now, just take a moment to appreciate how pretty this book is. I picked it up because from looking to it, I was expecting something a little bit like this Dragonology book, which you have to admit is also stunning. But it appears to be a world where dragons can turn into human beings or disguise themselves to look like it, and there are dragon hunters who are after them. But then it's about challenging stereotypes about how dragons aren't necessarily all evil, and all of the knights aren't the whole Knight Templar trope where they are on a holy mission to destroy all dragons, which is technically what they are there for, but they come to challenge it, or at least one of them does. Again, I am a big fan of dragon things. I may be completely wrong in the idea because I haven't read it. I haven't read most of these books, which I'm very disappointed about, but I've just been so very busy. And Tumblr, lots of Tumblr. I suppose there's not much else I can say. I could probably film some of these again because I've described them pretty terribly, and if I'd just done a bit of research, because some of the descriptions of these are not useful at all, I could have done them much better, but c'est la vie. As it is, I do hope you enjoyed the video. Please click like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts of any of these. Let me know if you think I should get to some of them sooner or put some of them off a bit more. I am really looking forward to some of these, but I also have a really large currently reading pile. It's been getting bigger because of American Gods, and then other recommendations I'm getting. For example, I've been trying to read The Night Circus since March. Not really getting anywhere, but even though I really enjoyed it, it's just I got distracted. The internet has a lot to answer for destroying my reading speed. But it's mostly my self-control, I suppose. Now just two things. Have a happy teddy bear's picnic and have a nice day. Goodbye!